Hello everyone, I'm Matthijs and today I will be reading a little bit about A History of International Relations by Knutsen, and I will be reading about Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Okay, here we go. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, The Prophet and Paradox. The 18th century has been called by many names: the age of old regime, the age of cosmopolitanism, the era of democratic revolution, the age of enlightenment. Few thinkers are as representative of this rich, complex century as Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He wrote on astonishingly varied themes, including novels, operas, and beautiful essays on botany. His analysis of international politics amounts to only a minor part of his production. But what a part! Rousseau discussed war and peace, colonialism, and wars of liberation, all from a unique skeptical perspective, and with a penetration which singles him out as perhaps the major contributor to international relations theory of this age of enlightenment. Always a champion of individual freedom and self-reliance, Rousseau was a delinquent youth. He ran away from home several times, and periodically led the unsettled life of a penniless wanderer. He tramped around southern Europe and earned his living as a tutor of music, a writer of operas, a confident trickster, and a secretary to the French ambassador in Venice. At the age of 16, he encountered Mime de Warris at Anchin in Savoy. He would later play for him the role of the mother he had never. She would later play for him the role of the mother he never had. She would also become his protector, his teacher, and his mistress. Rousseau's first major essay was his Discourse on the Arts and Sciences of 1749, which won first prize in a competition announced by the Academy of the Yuan. Much encouraged, Rousseau launched a career as a writer. Within a dozen years he had written most of his major works, including the Discourse on the Origin and Basis of Equality Among Men, and the Social Contract. Is this also a paper he has written, or a book perhaps? Okay. Rousseau was one of the first of the modern intellectuals, one of the first angry young men. His penetrating intellect and his considerable charm earned Rousseau admirers all over Europe. His unorthodox clothing and his calculated scandals made him the darling of the Parisian salons. Here he became the principal voice of the essential claim of enlightenment, that human beings were fully capable of comprehending social reality and of manipulating their physical and social environment. Among the first social theorists in history, he claimed that humanity could devise formula by which the structure of society and the fundamental human habits could be described. Although he died a decade before the French Revolution, many contemporaries held him responsible for it. Indeed, this was one of the few things on which Louis XVI and Robespierre agreed. During the Revolution, the National Convention voted to have his ashes transferred to the Pantheon. In the decades which followed this transfer, public opinion grew increasingly divided on his place in history. He attained the status of a saint to some, and favored villain to others. To Shelley, he was a sublime genius. To Schiller, he was a Christ-like soul for whom only heaven's angels are fit company. People who had met him usually begged to differ. Diderot, after long acquaintance, characterized him as vain as Satan, ungrateful, cruel, hypocritical, and full of malice. But on one point there been full agreement. Rousseau was a momentous contributor to international relations theory. To put Rousseau's international relations analysis into perspective, it is necessary to begin with Charles Castel Abbé de Saint-Pierre. Like other peace projects of his age, Saint-Pierre's project for making peace perpetual in Europe of 1713 is founded on the Enlightenment anthropology, that man endowed with reason. He had studied Hobbes and found in Hobbes' description of the state of nature a powerful analogy to the condition of war which existed among states. His solution to the problem of war was similar to Hobbes, except whereas Hobbes wrote about all humanity, Saint-Pierre only wrote about princes. The rulers of Europe will sooner or later be forced by reason to realize that their interests are better served by peace and order than by war, he argued. This realization would drive them into closer cooperation and finally into a confederal government, a council or diet on which the ruling princes of all member states would be represented. Saint-Pierre, like Rousseau, an advocate of integration of the states of Europe into a federal Europe. Saint-Pierre is like Rousseau, an advocate of the integration of the states of Europe into a confederate union. He devised a variety of bureaus which should handle matters of the common interest to the member states. This one important bureau should work out the code of commercial jurisprudence to regulate commerce between the subjects of different states. Another should standardize weights, measures, and currency of the member states. Saint-Pierre is like Rousseau and also like Montesquieu and other Enlightenment authors, preoccupied with the characteristic Enlightenment belief that trade furthers peace. Saint-Pierre's simple, appealing, and important message was obstructed by his unattractively repetitious and rhapsodic style. After Saint-Pierre's death, his friends and family searched for a sympathetic scholar who could make the Abbé's voluminous writings on war and peace accessible to the princes and people of Europe. In 1754, they asked Jean-Jacques Rousseau to edit and abridge Saint-Pierre's grand project. This request would spark one of the most unique and penetrating analysis in the history of international relations theory, although not necessarily one which met with the approval of Abbé's heirs. The work kept Rousseau busy for several years, but it was never completed. He only finished a long introduction to the planet's work. This was issued separately as the Project for a Perpetual Peace of 1760. Rousseau was too impatient and imaginative to reproduce faithfully the thoughts of another man. His project is a brilliant essay, but it contains more of Rousseau than Saint-Pierre. Indeed, Rousseau could scarcely hide his opinion that Abbé's argument was superficial and impractical, owing to one idea from which the author could never escape. That men are motivated by their intelligence rather than their passions. He ends this abridgment with the remark that Abbé's case rests on the unproven assumption that kings have enough reason to see what is useful to society at large. He then wrote a detailed criticism in a separate commentary, Judgments on Perpetual Peace. which he did not dare to publish. When Hobbes, Rousseau, Grotius, Hume, Kant, Voltaire, and Saint-Pierre reduced the dynamics of international politics to human nature, Rousseau introduces another element as well. Whereas Hobbes, for example, portrays humanity as proud and covetous, Rousseau portrays it as peaceful and kind. There is nothing inherent in human nature that predisposes people to aggression, Rousseau claims. People become fighters and warriors only when they are moved from the state of nature to civil society. War is a social undertaking. It is a product of human civilization. It is the citizen who is most eager to become a soldier, not the human being in a state of nature. Armies and wars do not exist until societies exist, with states which organize their citizens into armies and march them off to further the interests of their rulers. At this point, Rousseau is at odds with the other contract thinkers. For them, the social contract ends conflict among people, but for Rousseau it creates the preconditions for war. Rousseau argued, like Locke, that human beings are endowed with natural reason and with natural rights to freedom. But he also claimed that, in actuality, humanity is enslaved. This apparent paradox appear in several of Rousseau's writings. For example, in the opening line of the social contract, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." His major social treatises are all address this apparent paradox of liberty and rationality on the one hand and enslavement on the other. If people are rational, why aren't they capable of seeing that they are being enslaved and exploited by the existing social order? Rousseau's answer is that humanity has been corrupted by this order. Society is corrupt, and it is as individuals are born into this corrupt society that they become corrupted in turn. People are malleable. They are shaped by the society they inhabit. If they are born into a good society, they will develop their reason and become good people. If they are born into a corrupt society, their reason will be stunted and warped, and their natural liberty will be replaced with vanity, contempt, shame, envy, and other dismal factors. In a corrupt society, people will be alienated from their original liberty, happiness, and innocence. Two important corollaries flow from this line of reason. First, the corruption and alienation of humanity cannot be explained as an outcome of human nature. It must be explained as a result of the intolerable human social situation. Second, humanity is rational, but only potentially so. People are not born with reason, they develop reason. This raises another question. If people were originally free, good, happy, and innocent, how did society become so corrupt? Rousseau's answer to this question hangs on two intimately intertwined components: a historical analysis and a theory of a division of labor.